On the topic of funding welfare organizations through corporate social investment and how often it's viewed in business as providing a minimal return on investment. In a developing country, it is arguable that welfare support forms at least an obligatory and or moral part of South Africa's giving. Smaller grants from a varied donor base not only assist with the sustainability of welfare organizations that don't have a product to sell or use to sustain itself, but also decreases the risk of dependency on each and every donor. If traditional well-run welfare organizations close to funding constraints, we lose a service sector in South Africa, as well as the service of well-trained staff members in this sector that the state will never afford to reopen. So I started around that topic and then led on with quotes and statistics from Dr. Mampela Rampella's article of 6 March 2011, providing some statistics about the size of welfare grants in this country and how we have a limited pot really. And the balance of the pot then has to cater for blind, deaf, sick, disabled, mentally handicapped, the whole spectrum, and that there's just simply not enough funding. And if we don't find donors to continue contributing to the sector, we are going to lose an area of a country that will always be needed. We are always going to have children that will need to be placed in institutionalized care, disabled people that need care, old age people, regardless of what your cultural thinking on placing an elderly person in an old age care center is. There comes a time where possibly that elderly person has Alzheimer's and the family can no longer cope. We cannot think that this country can do without such facilities. I think we had quite an interactive session. A particularly good question I liked from people attending the session was one saying that it's not all about the funding, but it's about what else the corporate sector can bring. Is it a skill from a colleague in the office? Is it through a donation of food, through painting a room? What is it? But jointly we need to make that difference. I then also looked at Barbara Holtzman's Safe Community of Opportunity model, just briefly to say that it was very difficult to talk about welfare in isolation, that it forms part of education, health, of the bigger picture. If we're going to get a society or community right, we're going to have to look at it in combination with all the factors. And I think the importance of finding varied donors for this sector, for the welfare sector, even if they're smaller grants, but from a broader pool of donors, will help with the sustainability of these projects. We also then looked at how we bring unsexy projects, like a lot of the welfare programs are, back onto the giving schedules of corporates. Whether we define it as a community project, whether we do investigation inside the corporate itself as to how many people utilize a facility in the neighborhood, how many people have disabled children, just making sure that we remember it and that it's there.